What is up, everyone? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. Happy New Year, first of all. We are now in 2023, of course. And that just made me think, obviously, you see on Twitter, you see on social media, all these takes, all these hot takes going throughout the year. So I thought of making the top 5 MMA hot takes for 2023. Obviously, these are just my opinion and my thoughts, and maybe some of my wishes that MMA and the UFC put into practice going into this year. So make sure to drop this video a like. Make sure to put your comments down below. What's your MMA hot take for the year? And of course, make sure to follow us on social media at CageChat MMA across all socials. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of that stuff, and TikTok also. Make sure to drop those a follow. We're going to smash into the new year. And our first hot take of 2023 is, of course, a new division. Now, it's been hotly contested that we should have more weight classes in MMA. We should have more weight classes in the UFC, whether that's a 165-pound division, move the 170 up to 175. But my hot take is that we're going to see a new division into the UFC this year. Now, personally, I'd like to see that at cruiserweight. Around the 230-240 mark, I'd like to see a division put in place there. I do think there's enough talent between light heavyweight and heavyweight to fill that gap there. You know, you see like the Chris Daukaus's of this world, the Cyril Gahns potentially, maybe the older guard of the Stipe Miocic's, the DC's, maybe the Jan Blachowicz of this world. I think that'd be beneficial or more attracted to a cruiserweight division at 235, maybe somewhere in between the 230-240 markers. You know, we know 205 is light heavyweight, and we've got 265 as the limit for heavyweight. And I think it makes sense to do a cruiserweight division in the UFC and in MMA because, you know, let's say the commission, or let's say the UFC booked the flyweight champion, Devson Figueiredo, to take on Islam Makhachev at 155. That fight would just never be made at the weight classes that they're in. You know, it just wouldn't be possible. But somehow we let it happen in the heavyweight division. Of course, you know, there's a 265-pound limit, but you can weigh in 230, 235, you know, like the Chris Daukaus's do. Those that are probably, slowly moving their way down to the light heavyweight division because they're not quite big enough, or, no, the competitive edge isn't there for them to compete in the heavyweight division. Naturally, just because of their size. You know, you wouldn't see it. A Darren Till up against, a Volkanovski or a Makhachev. You just wouldn't see those fights happening. The commission wouldn't allow it. So in my opinion, I think we should look at the cruiserweight division personally. And maybe, going beyond that, maybe 195 would be my second option, especially in the men's division. And then my third wish for a weight class would be, we've seen the featherweight division experiment would not work in the UFC. So why not give that to Bellator? Let's give them the remainder, and, you know, the Noah Dormants of this world, or Norma Dumont, sorry, pardon my pronunciation there. Let's give them to the Bellator, or maybe give them to Invicta, and let's say Invicta, we'll take your atomweight division. Let's have the 105-pound division in the UFC. It's been very well done at 1FC. It's been very done well with Invicta. And the likes of the Michelle Watersons of this world, Corey McKenna's of this world. Corey McKenna, she has the shortest reach in the UFC, so she's already, up against it with the strawweights of this, the top strawweights of this division. She's just naturally not got that frame for a strawweight division, but maybe she has a frame for an atomweight division. So I think, maybe let's look at bringing in the smaller weight classes. Again, ONE FC had done it great. Invicta have had it there for a while. Now, of course, with the atomweight division. So I think a new division would be a good idea for the UFC. Again, personally, I'd start at the cruiserweight and then work our way down the divisions at 195 and then the atomweight division for the women. And, of course, close down the featherweight division because that's just not worked out. Of course. Moving on to number 4. It's Paddy Pimblett. Now, I don't know if this is because I've had enough of Twitter, the storm and barrage of abuse and hate and the dislikability that people have towards Paddy Pimblett. Now, for some of those reasons, they are, completely valid. More so the things that he does outside the cage, more so than inside the cage. I think he gets a rough rap inside the cage. Again, because he has had this meteoric rise since joining the UFC of 2021 now. He joined the UFC. There's always this talk about, he's been given easy opponents. He's had opponents cherry-picked him. Similar to the narrative that Conor had. Although Conor was more revisionism, I think. Because let's not forget, he had a Max Holloway in there. He had a Dustin Poirier in there. He had Chad Mendes in there on the way up. Now, Dennis Seether maybe you could definitely look at potentially with his age. But again, it's more revisionism, and since the fall of Conor McGregor, it's been more favourable to dislike Conor. Now, Paddy Pimblett is not going to be Conor McGregor. He hasn't got the talent. He has the star power of Conor McGregor, but he doesn't have the talent yet. Now, he's only 27 years of age. And it would have been interesting had he made the move to the UFC like he had the opportunity to when he was 23, 24, and how he would have matured then. Obviously, he turned those opportunities down because he wasn't mature enough yet. And he grew, and, he's picked the moment, and he's done very well since he's joined the UFC. He's 4-0 in the UFC now. And my hot take is that he'll remain undefeated in 2023. I think he fights 2 or 3 times this year, maybe in April, around International Fight Week in July, and then maybe towards the back end of the year at MSG, probably at New York. I could see him being one of those, those pinpoint for the big stages that the UFC have. Of course, there's the card in London. I don't know if Masters are too quick of a turnaround, especially with that potential ankle injury that he, was talking about post Jared Gordon fight. But I do think Paddy Pimblett goes the year undefeated. And as I mentioned, he's only 27, 28 years of age. I don't think his ceiling is going to be UFC champion, at least not within the next 5 years. He might be a late bloomer like a Michael Bisping or a Glover Teixeira, but I don't know if that happens. But I do think if he has the right opponents, personally I'd like to see a Mark Diakese or Jai Herbert in London, maybe someone in around that mark. I think Michael Johnson's too much so far, but I'd say a Diakese or a Herbert. Or if you wanted to burn that bridge, and I've said it before, give him Conor McGregor. Give him the Conor McGregor test. And it's probably the 2 biggest draws in those divisions, maybe. Maybe the 2 most hated people in that division also. Let's put them together in July, in International Fight Week. Don't belt on the line. And just have an absolute fun and fair with the build-up for it, if you want to go down that route. But yeah, my hot take is that Paddy Pimblett goes 2023 undefeated, and proves some doubters wrong, and probably sets Twitter on fire, just like Elon Musk has. But moving on, is the man himself, Conor McGregor now. It's been hotly rumoured, anticipated, and mentioned predominantly by McGregor himself that he's going to be returning this year. Now, of course, there's the whole thing with USADA and not being in the testing pool, whether that's injury related or because he was in Hollywood making his movie. But obviously, there was some sort of mishap or misreasoning as to why he pulled out the testing pool that wasn't clearly demonstrated or articulated towards the audience. Now that doesn't necessarily have to happen. Of course, now with USADA, they almost give you the verdict post the sort of charge or the outcome. In obviously beforehand it was they tested positive for this. Now it's more streamlined so if they are able to defend themselves or produce enough evidence as to a tainted supplement, etc., it doesn't taint their career so much. We've seen it with the likes of Bobby Green. But McGregor's going to come back in 2023, and my hot take is that he'll fight twice this year. Obviously, we've not seen him since the leg breaking against Dustin Poirier. He fought twice that year, 2 losses against Dustin Poirier, of course. And if you remember the year before that against he beat Cerrone, of course, in 2020 prior to the pandemic, and he was absolutely itching to fight. I think he had the flame underneath him and in his belly to fight that year. He was calling out Anderson Silva, he was calling out everyone who wanted to scrap. And obviously the UFC with the pandemic didn't give them that fight because obviously there was no crowds involved and a lack of travelling, so it wouldn't have been a monetary value to the UFC to put Conor McGregor on that cut or let Conor McGregor fight on one of those Apex cuts. It would have been crazy to see, but it just wouldn't have been able to happen because of their value. Same with Jon Jones. But I do think he comes back this year. Now, whether he's successful this year, I don't know. I don't know where Conor McGregor is at. That's why I say test him against Paddy, because he should beat Paddy Pimblett. He should have the skill set, and does have the skill set still to beat Paddy Pimblett. But does he have the hunger to beat Paddy Pimblett? And, he's come out of the UFC lightweight rankings. Now, he is Conor McGregor. He's the star power, so he only needs one win. He can pretty much pick who he wants to face, pretty much at any division. But, of course, he's going to want whatever brings the most money to him and hopefully makes the most sense stylistically, because he was the other day talking about 185. That doesn't make sense to him because obviously you've got Darren Till in there, who's still a very dangerous opponent. You've got Dricus du Plessis. They're too big for him. Who currently stands at 5. Well, he will always stand at 5'9", but he's too short for that division. Of course, he's put a lot of weight on. How we don't that is up in the air where they can continue to hold that weight while being in each side of the testing pool. We don't know. But he's going to float in between 155 and 170 for sure. Now, Jorge Masvidal, I would like at 170 if he wanted to go down that route. Someone along that line. Obviously, again, they're a lot bigger. Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington, Bilal Muhammad, Gilbert Burns have their way with him. Him versus Wonderboy wouldn't be a too bad shot. But again, I think Wonderboy would be too skillful. But the age of Wonderboy probably, makes it a bit of a thorough contest. But that would be an interesting. It would have been more interesting to see the McGregor prior to the Khabib loss. That more karate style based McGregor. If he was at 170 against Wonderboy, that would be an interesting fight. But outside of that, I don't see too many fights happening at 170 for him, other than maybe Ian Gary. But again, they're countrymen. They're not going to fight one another. It's just the storyline in my head would be the old guard to the new guard for Ireland. But again, that fight would never happen. So it's then a question of 155. Now, do you do Tony Ferguson? Do you do a Dan Hooker? And that would be a UFC almost thanking Dan Hooker for his, ability to turn up the last 2-3 years. It'd be a thank you fight for him. Not that I say he doesn't deserve it, but it'd be one of those ones similar to Don Cerrone. It's like you put these many hours and the octagon, we'll reward you now with the money fight. So it's an interesting point as to who he fights and where he fights. But I think if he's fit and he's been in the testing pool, I know he said February and March he'd be ready with the testing side of things, but I think we're going to aim for July. And I think he's also on that New York card. Or maybe the Abu Dhabi card. I doubt he'd be in a title shot, but we've seen weirder things happen in the sport. If he gets a good win over a Tony Ferguson or a Dan Hooker, or maybe a Rafael dos Anjos, it wouldn't be beyond the UFC to put him in there with Islam Makhachev or Alexander Volkanovski if he'd been the title. But specifically, if Makhachev is champion for that Abu Dhabi card, you would not put it past UFC to make Makhachev McGregor, as unlikely and as undeserving that would be, in my opinion. Especially when Poirier's got 2 wins over him, and you got Justin Gaethje in there. You got Beneil Dariush is on a crazy win streak at the moment. But yeah, my hot take is that Conor McGregor in 2023 will fight at least 2 times in the UFC, and that moves us on, of course, to number 2, and it's Valentina Shevchenko. Now, this is more so the flyweight division as a whole. I'm going to have my male and female fighters of the years. They'll already be out, actually, on the channel. So make sure to go check those out. And it was a year for the flyweights, in my opinion. I thought the flyweight division really grew and really developed. It is a very weak division. Not maybe in name value, but also it never feels like you need to go on a long run. There's never a Beneil Dariush who has to go on an 8-fight, 9-fight win streak because the talent depth isn't there. You need 3-4 good wins and you're in a title shot, which is somewhat of not a disappointing. I mean, it's the state the division is in. Now, of course, the positive is because they're fighting each other, they're getting better with each other, and it means they're closing the gap on Valentina. Because obviously, a lot of those fighters have been in there with Valentina, so they can use those skills, and it filters down the pack, so to speak. And the gap is closing on Valentina. We saw that with Tyler Santos. Now, of course, it wasn't 100% Valentina, but it was a very close fight, and many thought that Tyler Santos won that. And potentially, if it wasn't for a clash of the heads, she might have won that fight. Also, but my prediction is, or my hot take is, that Valentina Shevchenko won't be the flyweight champion by the end of the year. Now, whether that's because Manon Thoreau or Tyler Santos or an Alexa Grasso, who's up and coming, has taken it off there, I'm not sure. Maybe it's because she's bantamweight champion, because Amanda Nunes has either lost the title to her in the trilogy, or Amanda Nunes has retired, and Valentina's gone up for a vacant bantamweight title, won that, and relinquished the flyweight belt. And maybe that's vacant towards the end of the year. But I don't think she will be flyweight champion come towards the 2023. I don't know how much Nunes has got left in the tank. Obviously, she regained her title against Pena this year. But I think with her having a child and wanting to build that family, she's cracked the game. There's not much left for her to do in the sport. So I think by the end of the year, she might have retired. And I think we see Valentina at bantamweight and potentially be the bantamweight champion and leave the flyweight division behind. And of course, the hot topic of 2023 is, of course, Jon Jones. And my hot take for Jon Jones is maybe not a hot take as such, but I don't think he'll be successful at heavyweight. Obviously, it's rumoured that he's going to fight Francis Ngannou for the title. Obviously, he deserves that with the stature of his legacy in the sport, specifically within the cage. No matter how you look at that, tainted or untainted, he's put in the groundwork and he's been one of the greatest of all time. And we've been anticipating and waiting for this step up to heavyweight now for you could say best part of the decade. But I think it's going to go badly for him now. Whether he beats Ngannou, I don't know. Again, Ngannou's a superpower at this division. He hits harder than pretty much anyone in the division, pound for pound. And I don't know if Jon Jones can beat that at heavyweight. I don't know if the size slows him down. He's been trying to put on this mask for a good 2-3 years now, and obviously there was talk about him being on that December card that just passed. Glover Teixeira and Yuri was supposed to be on there, but obviously we had Ankalaev versus Blachowicz in the end. But I don't think Jon Jones has a successful stint at heavyweight. Again, I think the guys might be too big for him, just physically. Again, like I said before, I'd like to see Jon Jones at a cruiserweight first. That'd be an interesting one as a cruiserweight fighter, and then maybe go to heavyweight. Maybe do three divisions if he could do that. Maybe he could be the first to be the cruiserweight. Maybe he opens up the cruiserweight division. Maybe he's unsuccessful at heavyweight and says, actually, I don't want to do light heavyweight. Let's do cruiserweight. Because he has enough drawing power to be able to do that. So that's something that we could look at. But again, obviously you got Tom Aspinall returning. Again, I don't expect him to be thrown into the title picture straight away. I think he needs a good solid winning, maybe against Taito Tuivasa. Obviously you got Tuivasa, of course, needs to rebalance after those 2 losses against Gane and Pavlovich. You've got Pavlovich, you've got Gane, you've got Curtis Blaydes in there. Stipe, somewhere around there, of course, he just had the loss of his father. So I don't expect him to be in the cage too often, but I'd imagine if and when Francis and Jones does get made, Stipe will probably be on that card, maybe against Curtis Blaydes or Cyril Gane, as with maybe one of those 3 as a backup potentially to Jon Jones should something happen. But yeah, those are my 5 hot takes for 2023 across MMA. I know they're predominantly UFC based, so maybe I'll do another one with non-UFC takes and opinions and predictions. But yes, let us know your predictions and your hot takes going into 2023. Do you agree with any of mine? Is there any that you strongly disagree with? Let us know in the comments down below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to follow us at CageChat MMA across socials. And I'll see you guys on the next video.